Hi, welcome to the Streets of NIL podcast. This is your host, Katie Wu. In today's episode, I'm joined by Anastasia Snodgrass, a freshman cross country runner for Cal Berkeley. Anastasia, welcome to the pod.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I want to just start off by just like getting to know your background. What sports did you play growing up? What sports do you play now? What's your sports story?
From a very young age, I started doing swim probably when I was about 3 years old, and obviously that's just a very competitive and dedicated sport. So I didn't grow up really doing a ton of sports. Actually, I kind of just grew up my entire life doing swim. I was part of the Mission Viejo Nadors, which is definitely a very reputable swim program, and I was super happy to be a part of it growing up. And like had some amazing coaches and great competitors and great athletes to be friends with. And kind of when I reached like little later elementary going into middle school, like kind of just in PE, I remember just like doing the mile and just like having to do that as like a standardized thing and kind of like randomly being good at it. And all these people kind of like coming to me saying, like, you have to put your daughter in running, like she's like amazing, like do running, do all this stuff. And I kind of just fell into it really naturally. It was kind of just something super random that happened, but I feel like it was definitely because of swim and like the base that I had from that. And then once I got into high school, I kind of decided that running would be something that I would want to take to college more than swim. So I had very supportive coaches that supported me like wanting to transition from swim to running. And then from high school, I like really narrowed down my decision of where I'd want to go because doing collegiate like athletics was something that I really cared about and something that I knew was going to be for me more. So I was very like strategic planning like what high school I wanted to go to and like grow from there. And that ended up being JSerra Catholic High School, which is I would say probably one of the top high schools for running and one of the best for running programs out there right now. So that was something that was super helpful, and I was able to really like immerse myself into the sport more after quitting swim and really transitioning into that. And then obviously like through the recruiting process and everything, I was very like happy with like my coaches and teammates, and they all like really helped me make this decision to come to Cal and start running there. But it was definitely a very random thing where I kind of just grew up doing swim my entire life and didn't really venture out doing any other sports, and running was something that kind of just fell into my lap and ended up being a great transition for me and to take to college.
Can you talk a little bit about why you chose Berkeley specifically?
Yeah, kind of didn't really know what I wanted at first when it came to looking for a school. I didn't know if I wanted to be close to home, be far from home. I'm from Orange County, California, so I'm in SoCal, and um I did all five of my official visits and talked to as many coaches as I could just to really get a feel for what I wanted. And I was actually verbally committed to another school, and then I decided to take a visit to Cal, and especially because I already had a friend on the team here. And he was very, very supportive of just kind of saying, like, you should come on official, you should seek it out. I really think that you'd like it. And I kind of just trust his word for it. And thought I'm committed to another school right now, but I'm just gonna take this visit and see if I really like it. Honestly, coming to Cal, like the environment of just the area, the atmosphere of being in the Bay Area is beautiful up here, obviously. Finding a school that had great academics and great athletics was something that was so, so important to me, especially just kind of like devoting so much of your time into sports. You really want the hard work to pay off. And obviously, like I wanted to be somewhere where like I could be a part of a D1 program, but also graduate with a really great degree. And obviously I think that like it describes Berkeley in the most like perfect way possible. So obviously coming here and kind of like seeing the campus, seeing the academics, meeting the coaches, seeing the team environment, it honestly just felt like such a great transition to where like I wasn't too close to home, I wasn't too far, and I could really take my running to the next level while also just getting a great education. So overall, that kind of is what really sold me, and committed probably like 2 days, officially committed to Berkeley probably 2 days later after my official visit. So I definitely like loved it from the get-go, and it's been nothing but positive experiences here so far.
I have a question from a friend who's a runner and has aspirations for running at the next level. She wants to know what your advice is to be in a position similar to you. What does she have to do to get to that next level?
I would say definitely it's such a trust the process. Starting freshman year, I kind of, well, growing up, I kind of always knew that I wanted to do sports in college. I didn't know if it was going to be for swim or for running, but even kind of freshman year, it's kind of a really large wake up call of like, it's something that you have to just kind of stay motivated with, trust the process, and just stay really dedicated to it. I would say that like for me and many other runners, it was definitely like the longest growth period ever. I think from where I started freshman year to where I was senior year, I never thought that I would accomplish half the things that I did. So kind of just like allowing yourself to trust yourself and also like trust your coaches, trust your training is super huge because obviously running is just such a mental taxing sport. And just learning not to ever get too hard on yourself through it. and kind of just know that like, yes, it is 4 years, it's a long process, but at the end of the day, like if you're part of a program that like you trust and you feel like you have a good relationship with your coach and with your teammates and with yourself, I feel like that's kind of like the best way to start off. And from there on, just kind of knowing that like you're gonna go through bad races and good races, but there's so many to come, and it's never just kind of, it's always a continuing cycle. So really just like knowing, like having confidence in yourself and having confidence in your ability, and like knowing that it's a process and that's not all going to happen overnight is kind of just the one thing just to stay motivated and really get through it.
How did you first get started in NIL? How did you secure your first NIL deal? What was that process like?
So for me, I had a lot of older friends that were already in college. I had a few friends running for UCLA who were doing a lot of really cool stuff with NIL, and they were all kind of just like people that like I looked up to, and they were like my older teammates, and I was very interested in kind of like what it was about. And obviously, like kind of part of my team, my high school team, like we did receive like a lot of like social media exposure, and like we did a lot of like really cool like fun interviews and like like photo shoots and all this kind of fun stuff. So being kind of like exposed on social media was something that I was already like kind of used to like through that team, and kind of like NIL just seemed like another like sector where I could like use like my name and like background kind of to like expose on social media. So I guess when coming to Cal, like I really wanted to just like navigate it and kind of like scope it out a little bit. It all kind of started out over the summer. I began interning as a social media and marketing creator for this company called Voice in Sport, which is a female sports advocacy company. And I did basically all of like their Instagram and marketing techniques for kind of like gaining followers and getting people to join the platform, while also like creating like reels and stories and Twitter posts and all those kinds of things. So kind of doing that, like I was already kind of getting a little bit exposed to like how athletes are really like getting into NIL, and kind of like took some of the things that I learned through working with Voice in Sport for myself. So kind of over the summer, I started reaching out to few companies that I had like used basically almost like every single day. The first one that kind of like really like started me off was Alani Nutrition, who I'm still working with and obviously like have a really great relationship with. But kind of reached out to them and asked, hey, like I'm a freshman, and like obviously it's kind of hard coming from a non-revenue, non very social media exposure sport, but kind of just reaching out saying, hi, like I'm a freshman, like I really, really love your guys' product, and like I'm coming in as an NIL and would love to work with you guys and see how to like garner a relationship like through social media exchange posts, and kind of just starting off with like the baseline thing of seeing like how you can work with these companies. It's kind of how like I originally started with it. Luckily like Alani really like took me in and like brought me onto like their A team program, which is like their large ambassador program. And then I started working locally with their San Francisco team as well. But after kind of working with them and like just having like kind of like a company already on my Instagram that I was working with really opened up a lot of doors. And kind of I could say that I had experience with working with them to where I was able to go out to more companies and say, I've done experience with these people. Like I'd love to like see how I can gain a relationship with you. And like for me personally, like I didn't necessarily see NIL just as like payment. I also really just saw NIL as just a way to like learn more about marketing and business and sales, and like learning how to just like garner relationships with those kinds of people, especially for someone who wants to get into like a more marketing job instead of and like be into business. So that's kind of like what I saw for myself. And then was able to start working with like Joe Lynn and Amazon and Noon and all this few of these other companies. But it was definitely more of a, it wasn't handed to me kind of thing. I definitely had to put myself out there more and really learn how to like build my brand image and learn how to really differentiate myself from other athletes when it came to contacting these people. Because obviously when you're not football or basketball or a high income sport that's receiving a lot of exposure from the school already, you kind of really learn how to put yourself out there and differentiate yourself from other athletes, and kind of like determine like what's really unique about you and sell yourself to these companies to have them work with you.
Can you talk a bit about talk more about like how being a non-revenue sport, does that like discourage you, intimidate you a bit? And how have you kind of gotten over that and what changed for you?
I think kind of in the beginning, it was definitely intimidating. I think it was also intimidating being a freshman and, not really having much college experience under my belt. I was able to say that I was a college athlete, but like realistically, when I started getting into NIL, like I hadn't even done a collegiate season yet. So I think those two key components were a little intimidating going into it. I think more learning about it now, I try to kind of use it more to like my advantage, I guess, because I feel like there's not that many cross country athletes working with some of the companies that I do work with. Just kind of like good example, I work with Joel Clothing, which is probably, I would say, the top swim brand clothing company in the world right now. And I'm not a swimmer at all, and, like, I don't, like, use any of that stuff, but, like, I, like, represent, like, all their activewear. So it was kind of a thing where it's like, "I'm not able to do this, but, like, I could be your only cross country athlete to wear your guys' activewear stuff." So it was kind of like, "Okay, like, yeah, I am part of a non-revenue sport. I'm not gonna get these NIL deals handed to me. I don't have the huge following base that, like, some of these football and basketball players have, but at the end of the day, like, I could be the only cross country athlete that these companies are working with, and that can be something that's new for them. It's a new face, it's a new idea behind their brand. So I think kind of like using that more to my advantage and not being too intimidated by it was something that I really wanted to use instead. And I guess it definitely in the beginning, like it definitely is intimidating of just like, will they want to work with me? Like, will this work out? Like, do I have like the followers? Do I have like the name, image, likeness? Like, do I have it all? And I think really just like learning to put yourself out on the line and realizing that like some of these companies don't have like a cross country female young athlete. And maybe that is what they're looking for. Maybe they want something new. So, I guess that's kind of like the great thing about NIL is that like it really differentiates for everyone and it is like very individualized. So, I guess kind of playing into it for your advantage is more beneficiary, but I would say it's definitely more it doesn't get handed to you as a non-revenue athlete. It more as you have to like put yourself out there.
And what is that process like for you now landing NIL deals? Do you do brand outreach? Do they reach out to you now that you have kind of like a resume of brands that you've worked with? What is that process like?
Yeah, I would definitely say in the very beginning, it was all me reaching out, and wanting to just get into it. After probably participating in like 2 or 3 NIL deals, I was able to start having companies reach out to me now, which has been super, super flattering and just like an amazing now experience to know that like I'm finally getting to where like I wanted to be with NIL and start like having companies reach out to me and want to work with me. But I would say definitely in the beginning, yes, it definitely was kind of wanting to work with companies that like align with my values and align with what I care about as like an athlete because obviously like at the end of the day like I don't want to be representing a company that I don't support or that they don't really like align with like my like brand image or what I support as an athlete. So definitely in the beginning like I wanted to like reach out to the companies that I do use and like I do like already have like a genuine like relationship with in a sense and like kind of use on like my everyday kind of go and use with practice and everything because that's just kind of easier to express like why I would want to work with them. And then kind of now after putting in that work and trying to just like get experience with that, now having companies reach out to me, like now it's more like, okay, like I'd love to hear like about what you guys stand for, what's your brand message, like what are you guys trying to put out to your consumer? Learning that from them and then being able to work with them and then see if I want to continue it. And that's kind of what it's been recently now. Like I've been able to work with Prime Student and just build a like 6-week partnership with them. And those were kind of like the things where it's they can reach out to me and I can kind of hear what their goals are and see if that aligns with mine. And then we can really gain a relationship through that and see if it can keep going forth. But I would definitely say within like my freshman year, it was definitely a big development and big growth on who was reaching out to who and like who I was able to kind of gain deals with, not gain deals with, and then who reached out to me now.
How has the way you interacted with social media changed, if at all? Are you more conscientious of what you're posting now that you're trying to be marketable to brands?
I would say actually, no. Luckily, I feel like I tried to not let myself get that way. I still wanna make
Mhm.
sure that, like, I'm still being, like, my full authentic self, like, on social media, and obviously, I think it does come when you do work with companies and you post about their product, like, you definitely wanna make it look as professional as possible, and shine them in a positive light and, like, really, like, bring a good message to them when, like, you are representing them. I think that there's definitely a huge obligation when it comes to that, and, like, that's kind of what you take on when like you're willing to represent a company. But kind of like when it comes to like my own like personal things, like I still love to like just post like my friends and very like stuff that I'm doing in my day and like in my life and keep it very real and keep it very authentic. I don't want to kind of show something that's not truly who I am. And I think that kind of just not getting too caught up in like the influencer world and comparing yourself to other people and other athletes and people who are doing different things than you. I think there's a huge difference between like influencers and then like NIL athletes. Like I think that kind of you deciding what your own destiny with that is gonna be is kind of, like, up to you, and I think that it is definitely a learning process. And I would say, like, in the very beginning, like, it was hard kind of wondering if, like, my Instagram was professional looking enough or if I had enough followers, if I needed to, like, change this and have more posts about this, and, it definitely you do wanna, like, eliminate the self-criticism as much as possible when it comes to it. Because obviously, at the end of the day, if a company reaches out to you and wants to work with you, it's because of what you've already posted of yourself and showing your full self and being kind of like true to who you are and like learning to put that out there more than kind of having a facade of things of what's really not like. So I think kind of like after a little while, I definitely like when it comes to like my personal things, like I want to post about my friends and what I'm doing and having fun in college, and like I'm still like just a student athlete. Like there's really not much to it. But when it does come to like posting for a company, like I definitely want to make it look as professional as possible and really make it look marketable and reputable and kind of like give them a positive light on like what like they're promoting.
How has your life changed before and after NIL? What have you learned from NIL, either professionally, socially, personally? You talked a lot about like how NIL has given you like a little look into your possible professional future. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I would definitely say after getting into NIL, it's opened a lot of doors for me just also at Cal. My teammate actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, like they're looking for an NIL student representative." And he was like, "I know that you're just a freshman. You're technically not old enough to be qualified for it, but like honestly, like I still pitch your name, like you should fill out this application." And I was thought, okay, like I might not get it, like it might not work out, but I'll apply for it and just see in general. And I ended up luckily getting it, which I was super flattered and honestly super excited about, and was able to start really getting a relationship with the NIL compliance staff and really start getting NIL up and running for Cal. We've started working on so many projects. We're getting an Instagram launch and kind of recruiting athletes and like learning more about like what athletes want from NIL. And like I was became a part of like our SAAC program as well, and served as the SAAC NIL rep as well, which is the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, which basically overlooks honestly all the resources that Cal student athletes need. So I also was able to start connecting a lot with the student athletes at Cal, learning more about what they want from NIL, kind of seeing what they need, because a lot of student athletes just don't really know where to start with NIL. They don't know if they're qualified for it, and they don't know how to really start emerging and navigating themselves through it. So I would say that kind of learning to connect with student athletes has also just like engaged my communication skills as well, and learning to kind of pitch ideas, like learn problem solving, learn just how to communicate better with everyone, and kind of learn how to just like have goals and achieve them within a team. So I've been very excited to start doing those projects with the NIL compliance staff of just creating social media like platforms, creating a website for us, creating like influencer exchange, which is going to enable student athletes to literally go onto an app and click what NIL deal they want to participate in. So that's been kind of huge. So not only working on NIL for myself, but taking everything that I've learned from NIL and being able to help student athletes with it now as well has been super, super fun and just like really like a motivating thing, because obviously it was something that I was really passionate about, and I wanted to learn for myself first, and now I'm able to kind of help other student athletes navigate it is something that's obviously super, super special. And now kind of also being a part of that sector, started also working with the Berkeley Law Clinic on kind of just like legal stuff when it comes to NIL. Obviously, you're getting contracts and all of this stuff kind of handed to you. So kind of now working with the Berkeley Law Clinic, they're also providing free like financial literacy, and also kind of learning how to like read contracts and understand like what you're going to be signing when you're an NIL athlete, because there's so many rules that come to it. So for people like me who represent themselves and don't have like agencies in the very beginning of NIL, that help is super, super helpful. And then also working with Haas School now, doing a seminar with one of like the best professors in Haas, kind of learning about equity fluent leadership, and how that relates to your brand image and NIL. So honestly, like after kind of taking my experiences and telling Cal everything that I've done, and them giving me the opportunity to be this student representative and now work with the compliance staff and create all these resources for student athletes, has been huge. And then also working with Haas and the Berkeley Law Clinic has just been super, super amazing, and has just provided me so many opportunities that like are great to like put on your resume and be able to say like I've done this. And I've just like being able to do that my freshman year is super, super huge, and I'm like super grateful for that. So I would say that that's kind of like where NIL like has brought me now, and kind of has just like built a community for me also as at Cal, besides just being a student athlete.
You're a media studies major. How has interacting with NIL, doing brand outreach, helped you get your foot in the door, given you a look into like I guess like really it seems like you're interacting with NIL now, and it's kind of informing you on what you might want to do later. It's giving you the skills and a toolkit of things that you can use later on. So can you talk a little bit more about like how NIL doing all this stuff now is going to help you prepare for a job or career afterwards, post
Yeah,
grad?
definitely. I think kind of very a lot of the foundations that I'm learning right now are definitely very applicable for kind of what I want to do with being a media studies major. Obviously, I can't start getting into that major necessarily till the second half of college, but it definitely kind of gave me an insight when it comes to like learning marketing techniques, learning about like communication skills, learning like what people need and like how to like kind of make these goals on how to benefit other people and kind of sell a product, sell an idea, and really get that launch is kind of like what I've started learning. I definitely think that when thinking about what student athletes want from NIL and what they want to learn and kind of creating these tools for them has been something that has kind of helped me build foundations for that. Like, for example, creating workshops for student athletes on NIL. We kind of like have to sit down and really think, what do they want to hear? How can we sell this to them? How can we make this something that they'd want to engage in? Like, what are certain techniques that we can get them to come to us and want to learn about NIL and want to participate in these workshops and events and engage in the Instagram and engage in influencer exchange and all these kinds of things. Definitely are like kind of marketing foundations that like I want to like learn to apply later on, and also kind of like communicating to people. Like I've had to do a few interviews with freshmen and kind of like we do these freshman spotlights, which are basically going to be, so for our Instagram, freshmen can talk about their passions, talk about why they want to get into NIL, and these we can post about them and say, here's why you should work with this person. And again, it's selling these people, it's using their own unique name, image, and likeness so that companies would want to reach out and work to them. And it's kind of just at the end of the day coming up with these ideas about how to sell this and how to make this something that people can gravitate towards and want to participate in. I think is kind of like what I've learned from this and have really enjoyed. And that definitely is just like such a huge marketing sector that I hope to get into later, whether it's kind of marketing for sports or like just large corporate companies or kind of et cetera. I just think that having the baseline foundation of just learning how to have really great communication, learning how to like set goals with a team and really learn how to like accomplish things in harsh environments is something that's just really good to just gain a base level experience from before kind of like getting into my major and then kind of graduating and seeing where I'd want to go with that is kind of like what I've learned from now.
What's next for you? What are your plans for the future and goals that you have?
I would definitely think just continue working as much as I can with the compliance staff and really like not only benefiting an NIL for myself, but also just for everyone here at Cal. I definitely think that we have really good resources at Cal for NIL, but I think that they can be so much better. And I think that we can get so many more student athletes participating in NIL. I also think that it's something that's super important for student athletes that come here and that also don't have scholarship money. I think that's something that's also huge for student athletes to participate in and really get immersed in. And honestly, like I just think that it's done such great things for me and for such amazing things for starting for college that like I want everyone to have the same experiences I have and at least have like the equal chance to want to participate and do it. So I guess kind of not only for NIL with myself, but also really just helping other student athletes get more involved and get more into it. NIL is definitely not leaving anytime soon. If anything, it's just going to be becoming way much bigger and bigger. So I definitely want to just create more resources for the student athletes here to participate in NIL deals and really get immersed into it. And kind of just for myself, just kind of working up the platform and working up with the companies that I work with and hopefully gaining some of those really big NIL deals that like I've always hoped for and kind of just like more sponsorships and those kinds of things. But kind of just continuing the path that I'm on and enjoying like the relationships that I have with the companies that I work with now and hoping that in the future I can keep going bigger and bigger. But also just kind of at the end of the day, like enjoying it and realizing that it is such a blessing that like student athletes have NIL now. I can't imagine what it would have been like before. So I guess just kind of like learning that like this is like a really great experience from us and there's nothing but positive things to take from this.
Lastly, what's your advice for athletes who may be playing a non-revenue sport or maybe a younger athlete like you on how to get started with NIL and growing their personal brand?
I would definitely say kind of like learn things about yourself that maybe you didn't think about before. Kind of learn like what your passions are, learn like what makes you unique, and like honestly just fully stay true to yourself and learn kind of just how to like really sell that to people and know that NIL is so unique. It's really is your own name, image, and likeness, and kind of like determining like what makes yourself special and like what you really value about yourself and selling that to other companies and saying like this is why you should work with me and kind of like really like navigating those things within yourself and putting yourself out there is definitely the one thing that I would say. Don't like be hesitant on, can I reach out to this person? Like, what if they don't respond? Just do it. There's nothing bad that can come from it. If anything, like what the worst that they're gonna say is no. And from then on, you just can keep continuing, and at some point, like you'll find something. But I would definitely say, kind of just like do a deep dive within yourself, learn like what you're passionate about, what your values are, like what you hope your brand image to be, and like what you want to put out onto the internet and what you want yourself, what you want to represent. And from then on, really just put yourself on the line, reach out to people, like don't be afraid of rejection, kind of just go from there and really just enjoy the process of it. And whether you have to start farther back from someone because maybe your sport's not as big or you don't receive as many opportunities another sport may, that's just life and that's just how it might be. So just be willing to like put in the work if it's something that you really want to do.
On that note, thank you so much, Anastasia. I really appreciate it. This was really great.
Thank you.